examination is one of the key services a forensic science laboratory provides. Firearm examination is complex, technical, detailed, and experiencing a renaissance with the development and growth of automated database searches. The discipline of forensic firearm science or forensic ballistics encompasses the study of firearms, their manufacture, operation, performance, and analysis, along with analysis of ammunition, its byproduct, such as muzzle to target distance and gunshot residue. Comparison of bullets and cartridges are the main part of firearm examination. Also, how it is transferred the characteristics from firearm to bullet to cartridge cases. A number of preliminary and confirmatory examinations are done to establish the facts in question. In the field of forensic ballistics, the detection of gunshot residue is one of the important aspects in investigation. It not only helps in determining the range of fire, but also for the identification of the shooter. Often when we talk about forensic ballistics, questions such as its scope, on-the-field challenges, recent technologies, upcoming searches, and analysis arise in our mind. So, to answer all your queries, today we have with us Mr. Mohammad Abdullah Salim Alshamsi, sir, head of Firearm and Toolmark section of the Bible. Sir has graduated from first Interpol Young Global Police Leaders Program in 2019. He is a member
And always, it's a pleasure being a part of the Clue4 Evidence family. Thank you.
So, sir, you have been serving in the forensic field from years. So, how did you choose forensic as your career?
So this is actually a funny story. I didn't choose forensics. Forensics chose me. So since I was a child, I always wanted to be in law enforcement. I'm the kid who always you see in pictures saluting in all the pictures. And in school, I always liked science, every kind of science, whether it's math, biology, chemistry, etc. And I always liked the thrill of being in the lab, the thrill of experimentation, doing experiments, wearing your lab coat on itself made me the king of the world. So once I graduated back in 2010 from high school, there was a sponsorship program at Dubai Police. And Emiratis actually used to apply for this sponsorship program, and Dubai Police would facilitate their career in academia. So they would pay for their bachelor's degree based on an agreement of a specific subject. So I wanted to study mechatronics engineering for my bachelor's degree. And they said, okay, well, this major would be suitable in the forensics department. So it was this and that. I actually didn't know what was forensics back in the day. And after I graduated, I was so happy. I actually ended up being in a lab and being in law enforcement at the same time.
Okay, sir. So, sir, like you said that since your school days, law enforcement has always fascinated you. So, we would like to know more about your school days. Like, what kind of student you were, a bookworm or notorious?
Okay. So, you know, the person who plays all the times but gets good grades, and you keep on asking yourself, how does he do it? That's me. I have a very simple rule that applies since I was in school until now, actually. When it's time to play, it's time to play. When it's time to work, it's time to work. Very clear distinction between both. And I'm not saying working at home it's not useful. No, on the contrary, there are times when you basically lock yourself in a room and you are determined to not leave this place until you understand, you memorize, and you know it all. it always comes to that situation, and you weigh. It gets to the point where you make the decision or whether this is important to you or not.
Yes, sir. Okay, sir. And sir, like when we often see people, when it comes to choosing a specialization, people have a lot of story, lot of dilemma about it. So, what inspired you on becoming a ballistic expert, or like what got you into this field?
Okay, so the funny story is, since I started in the General Department of Forensic Science and Criminology at Dubai Police back in 2014, we have this rotation program. So you basically go around all of the departments and knowing everyone what do they do in order for you to get a general understanding. And the thing was, after this happens and you go to the crime scene and work there for a month and then you come back, after this happens, they tell you, okay, you are supposed to work in this department or that department. And I ended up being in the arson section, so arson investigation. And I was like, I don't like this. I want the firearms. So I went to the director of the general department back then and told him I actually didn't have a choice, and I see myself. I see that I have a passion, or I want to learn more about this field rather than this. He said, as long as you have a passion and you really want to learn, then go there. So passion is a must for me, and wanting to learn is something of my golden rules. I always tell my team whenever someone else wants to learn anything about our section, even if they are from a different forensics discipline, they come with a question, answer them, explain everything they like till they are satisfied, because you can only bring the horse to the water, but you cannot force it to drink. If they want, this is top of the world.
Yes, sir. So, sir, you talked about crime scene. So, what was your first crime scene encounter and how you reacted to it?
Okay, so I remember it vividly, and I actually have a picture of it. So my first crime scene. My first crime scene wasn't like in the close range of the department. It was actually at the far end of the country. So they were like, we need to go there, and we went there. This crime scene actually had tool marks, every kind of tool marks you can imagine, whether it is on windows, on safes. They had footprints on doors, climbing on doors, climbing on walls, on the sand, etc. And I actually the thing that I still remember to this day is noticing something the other people didn't notice, and I told them about this. They said, "Ah, you are right. You have a good eye for it." So my first crime scene put up the standards for me. So I always treat every crime scene as important as the last. So whether it is a burglary of maybe 50 million, okay, or whether it is something that a robbery happened in a grocery store. At the end of the day, someone is a victim here, and you need to treat all of them equally.
Yes, sir, exactly. So, when initially you started working as a forensic expert, so what are the challenges that you faced?
I actually faced many challenges. One of the challenges is me being so experts in generally are seen as someone with a long years of experience, maybe 15, 20 years plus of experience in a specific subject. And I respect that, okay? But an image of someone who is young, being an expert is something that is out of the tradition or out of the ordinary. And every time I go to conferences or teach people or explain anything, they say, how are you? You're so young. I tell them, this is actually a good thing. You should see yourself when you're 50. I'll be better looking than you. So traditional method, it was basically bringing what you can to the table. You have experts that are have been serving for a long time, and they have this. Some of them have a mentality of, "You're actually new. What can you teach me?" So this is something that drives the youth nowadays. Whether it is someone who just graduated from high school or someone who just started work in the forensics field. This mentality needs to change, and people who just started can bring something new to the table. I always say an expert, there's a clear distinction between an expert and someone who is experienced because of practice. A person who is experienced because of practice is someone who knows what to do and how to do it because he has been doing it for a long time. However, an expert, if you ask an expert the history of his science, he should know it. At the same time, the latest advancements of his field, because he's an expert, you are expected to know everything about the field, at least a broad knowledge of certain topics, but you should know.
Sir, at times this happens that you encounter such people on field who are very experienced than you, and they might be asking you to do this, do that because you are young. So at time like that, how you feel and how you react to such situations?
Always ask why. So why is more important than what and how. Okay.
Yes.
Why do we do this? Always challenge the status quo. For example, whether it is in standard procedures that you do in a forensics lab, or whether it is a completely different discipline or a field of work. Always ask why, because sometimes this is what's funny. Sometimes you ask them, why do we do this? And they start thinking about the why. And they notice that, well, since we came here 8 years ago, we've been taught to do this. And this is the way we've been doing it. But why do we do this? It's something very important that we call, I've learned this in UC Berkeley by Professor Homa. It's a tool called spring cleaning. So spring cleaning is what should we keep, what should we change or remove, what should we add. So do this routinely, maybe every month, every three months, whether it is with your team or on your own. All the procedures. So sometimes you will notice something that is done twice, and it is completely unnecessary. For example, you do a worksheet and you do it by hand. Okay. At the same time, you fill it up in the computer. Why do we do it twice? Just save that and be done with it, and it's easier. So always challenge, always ask why, and whether you are a head or a chief of a section or someone who is not in charge, always have that environment. You need to facilitate the challenging environment. The entire team in my section or anyone who comes to me, I tell them, ask me why. If you do not ask why, that means you stop thinking. So this is very important, and I think people who have a fresh mind or have a fresh mentality, someone who just graduated from high school or university, needs to always have this in mind. It's not just what we've been taught. Okay, you know what you've been taught and why. Okay, but at the same time, you need to always ask, why should we do this? Because at the same time, you are the one doing it, and it's your time.
Yes, sir. Sure, sir. This is a wonderful piece of advice, and we would definitely use this in future. Now, sir, we all are aware of the fact that forensic ballistic came into practice around 1800s. So according to you, what are the developments that has taken place which were initially not and is now and helping experts on the field?
Yes. Okay. So yes, as you mentioned, the firearms ballistics or forensic ballistics field has been or has been noticed since the 1800s, early 1800s, specifically 1835 by Henry Goddard, which is actually interesting because firearms actually have been around since hand cannons were there in the 1400s, but due to lack of documentation, or maybe there were no investigative techniques that have been documented back then, which is a shame. But it is very interesting, and the thing is, if you notice, starting from the 1800s till today, things actually happen. Okay, and these are done, and so there are different kinds of changes, okay, or different kind of adaptation methods that are used by UC Berkeley, which are called deliberative adaptation, accidental adaptation, and forceful adaptation. Forceful adaptation, like now. So in COVID, we're doing this online because due to COVID, no one can travel nowadays. So we have adapted forcefully. Similarly, in forensics ballistics, back in the day, in 1860s, if I'm not mistaken, you can determine time. They used to determine time of a projectile being shot. Only recently, these techniques are used to set a range of time, maybe 2 to 3 days, 4 to 6. However, uncertainties are endless, and the unknowns or unknown unknowns are needed to be determined before such examination needs to happen. So this is why time with regards to gunshot residue is not always determined. Similarly, back in late 1800s, you cannot actually test fire a firearm in order for you to examine it. Why? Because it changes the firearm itself. Nowadays, we know that the only way to actually identify a firearm is you need to actually test fire it. And you compare whether it is cartridge cases together or bullets together. So challenging it with reason. You need to have facts, whether it is examination procedures. For example, back in Europe, back in the day, in early 1900s, the way that they used to compare land and groove impressions of bullets, actually they used to roll bullets on wax. Okay. Then Professor Balthazar in also in early 1900s developed the photography technique, but it was always changing. So you can basically compare photos together. However, because of a specific case that happens in around 1913, and someone was accused of being a murderer and put in prison falsely. Only back then Charles Waite had the drive to develop the comparison microscope, which is the weapon of choice in the firearms forensics field nowadays. So always challenge it. So things that have been done, as we mentioned before, are not always right, or can be to a certain extent, but you need to at least understand why.
Sir, as we know that gunshot residue is a very important aspect in forensic analysis, but still advancement in technologies are there, but not that much. So according to you, what are the difficulties that are still faced in this field, and how technology advancement can help experts on this topic?
Okay. So gunshot residue is generally divided into two. Okay, whether it is distance determination or gunshot residue that exits through leakage of firearm and ends up on the suspect's hands, for example, or somewhere close to him. In distance determination, methods that are used are fairly unique compared to the other, because you are examining different components of gunshot residue.
Yes.
In gunshot residue on hand, for example, it's a matter of identification. So this is one of the challenges that are encountered. For example, has this person actually fired, or did this person actually fire this firearm? So you can say that this person has gunshot residue in his hand, but you cannot definitely specifically or say that this gunshot residue is from this firearm. At the same time, it is always a matter of, this is what we notice always with courts. When did he fire it? So time is something that is still under development and has been under development for the last almost 50 years. There are a lot of variables that need to be set for an examiner to basically identify time. However, it is not impossible, or definitely impossible. At the moment, we are not capable, but maybe in the future we will. Always have that mentality of maybe it will be with time.
Sir, we have been studying theoretically that laser techniques are used a lot for determination of range, and also like how many shooter were there and distance, variable distance. So on the field, still the technique is used and it is effective or not?
So in terms of effectivity of, correct me if I understood you wrong, distance determination and the sequence of shooting is what you're asking?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. So
Yes,
this,
sir.
this
Yes.
distance determination and sequence of shooting are two different fields, I would say. So distance determination is done by using eyes and chemical reagents that may transfer, like modified Grice method, or enhance certain nitrite particles in order for the examiner to have a look at it. And then determine his range. However, sequence of shooting is related to, I would say, crime scene reconstruction, whether it is on glass, on metal, on wood. There are, depending on the surface itself and depending on certain variables such as direction of shooting, it can basically, an examiner can determine the sequence of shooting. However, there are certain factors that an examiner needs to be aware of, such as the composition of the material itself. For example, we know that fractal radials only happen on glass, and they basically attach themselves to a pre-existing one. So thus, the pre-existing one is basically the one that has been shot before that one.
Yes.
However, when you shoot two bullets on glass close to each other, this might interfere with this. So it is not always true. And basically, if someone is determining this explicitly, I would always advise them to proceed with caution.
Yes. Sir, nowadays we have seen that a lot of web series and movies are being made on forensics. So when you watch those movies, and we know that as a student or professional in the field, there are a lot of loopholes. So how which recently a web series if you have watched, then what it is and how you reacted to it.
So, web series or books, or I actually enjoy them very much. And why do I enjoy them? Because sometimes they do things without knowing,
Yes, sir.
and it is technically possible. Okay, so they make it seem like out of this world, but once you think of it, it is technically possible. So it kind of broadens your perspective in a way, or makes your imagination a little bit diverse. Whether it is, for example, a bullet on a hip bone, and you have the hole itself, can you actually determine the number of lands and grooves from that? So ideally, certain things that are in fiction are good theories that can be exported and tested. So I use it as something that can be tested, rather than saying, it's just movies. Always have an open mind when seeing things, and why not watch movies? It's always good for you.
Yes, sir. So, sir, according to you, what is the prerequisite of ensuring that the crime scene has been, smoothly examined and investigation has taken place properly? So, what are the rules or some basic essential that the expert should know about it?
Okay. So, as I mentioned earlier, always treat crime scenes as important as a last. Do everything you can to help. So, some things that may happen is a person or an investigator can say, well, this is just maybe $50 or maybe 1,000 rupees, but it is someone who is affected. So always try to do what you can from A to Z. Some things or some other practices that I've noticed is, um, okay, there is a video camera. Why do we need to do this? So this is also the thing is, or the point of interest here is, you need to know that until the reports from the digital forensics or the fingerprint department or the biology department or whatever other field comes out, there is no certainty. You need to do what you can to help. At the end of the day, it is your report building on top of the other reports, and making the courts certain of their decision.
Okay, sir. So, sir, when you are on field, so what are the challenges that you face, like on working on the field? And according to you, what type of crime scene is very challenging and difficult, like indoor, outdoor, and
Okay, so every kind of crime scene is challenging. It's like a VUCA world, as they say. Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And sometimes you get crime scenes that actually happen in rooms where you have AC and good lighting, so you can see everything. It's daytime. Sometimes you get crime scenes where it is actually raining and it's in the desert, and you can barely even drive there, and it's just a mess. So always be ready, always have your tools with you. The worst thing that can happen is, this is something that I really hate, is if you reach a crime scene, okay, and you need something, and you say, where is this? And the person who's supposed to have it says, it's in the lab, or I forgot to bring it, or it's in my other car, or for whatever reason, you waste time, not just your time, everyone else's time, in just going and getting it. So always be ready for a clear and visible crime scene, and always be ready for even crime scenes that happen underwater. Um, Some people might actually commit a crime, use a firearm, and throw the firearm in the water, or even the bullets themselves end up in the water. You need to have the expertise, or at least general knowledge of how to handle such evidence. And the thing is, when it comes to the time and when that happens, all, as they say, all eyes on you. So always be ready.
Yes. So when it comes to forensic ballistic examination, the main part is courtroom testimony. So what are the challenges or some questions that are really weird that you face during your courtroom testimonies?
Okay. We need to understand something that courtrooms, whether it is a judge making the decision or even systems where they have juries, they want to feel assured. They want to feel, so this is subjectivity, they want to feel that what you are declaring or presenting objectively or subjectively is something that they can rely on based on good conscience. And for me, there are no silly questions, as they say. There is always, you try to always understand where this person is coming from and why are they asking this. So sometimes they ask a specific question and you think, well, this person doesn't know because he's not an examiner. Obviously, he's not an examiner, or sometimes he is an examiner by practice. However, try to understand why they're asking and try to make them understand why you're doing this. That's why we earlier said we do this because of why is important than how and what. And encourage it. I mean, if you know, this is the thing, if you know why you do everything, there is no other question that they can throw at you where you will be surprised. If you know what you do, okay, there is no other thing, there is no other scenario that they can like ask you or cross-examine you or do anything that can you think is out of the ordinary. Even if it is a question out of the relevant field, you can't say that because you understand why.
Yes. So we would like to know some case which has an impact on you, or some case which was very challenging to you. You really enjoyed solving it. So if you can share something like that with us.
There are many cases actually that I always enjoy assisting in investigation. Something that always comes to mind is let's see. So there was a murder case more than 5 years ago, and yeah, almost 5 years ago, and it was a firearms case. And the thing was, back 5 years ago, I wasn't as experienced that I am today. However, we had our senior examiners with us, people who used to teach us, who were our mentors, and now, unfortunately, they retired. But when the case happened, what I really admired, okay, is he picked up the cartridge cases while everyone was looking at him, okay, and around him. He picked up the cartridge cases and immediately he told them that these have been fired by a minimum of two firearms for the investigators to start looking. And for me, back in the day, it was I didn't know what was class characteristics and individual characteristics. For someone who is not in the field, this is mind-blowing. You look at something and you determine something else, and you tell them these are two firearms and a minimum of two firearms, and they start looking for it. What was surprising is the next day they actually found the two firearms in a back of a car trunk, and we positively identified them to the case that happened. So putting how do you say it? Presenting comfort, presenting assurance to people, not just people who are in your team, no, people around you, whether it is law enforcement, whether it is courts, other experts, maybe in your lab or other labs around the world. It is all about credibility and assurance, quality of work, have ethics. Always ethics comes first. Have continuous development. You don't want one of the day or one day comes and someone says, yeah, that guy, he used to be good. I don't know what he's doing right now. Always try to learn, always try to practice, always try to be up to date what is going on, and have fun with whatever you're doing. If you do not like it or don't have passion, why are you doing it? Simple as that. Make them feel that if you are not confident in your results, how do you expect other people to be confident in you? So it always starts within. If you do not change, no one else will. If you do not make your team assured and feel confident in you, how do you expect other people to feel confident? So I would say this case, for example, had an impact on me and made me push to be the best. So always strive to be the best, because if you're not putting in the effort, then you have a different goal in mind, and I hope you succeed. But for me, at least, I try to have very ambitious goals, and try your best in doing everything. Because if you do not, what's the point?
My next question to you is, sir, often you are always surrounded by firearms and with so much advanced technologies. So does it ever comes to your mind that yes, this is the one I want to possess? And which weapon would you really like to have with you?
I actually wouldn't, to be honest. So as you mentioned, all the firearms and all the weapons come to us on a daily basis. And you will notice that even most firearm examiners don't possess weapons. So this is the irony in the story, because we understand that firearm-related crime scenes only happen because a firearm was there or someone brought the firearm there. If you take away the firearm, it will be less severe. There will not happen. The firearm incident will not happen, basically. So we always try to stay safe. I mean, there are many ways to protect yourself, to use whatever other objects in order for you to achieve your goal. However, for me personally, at least, I stay away from firearms that are not related.
As you have said, that science have always fascinated you and you always wanted to be in labs. So if not a forensic scientist or expert, what you would have chosen for yourself?
Okay. So I will always be in law enforcement one way or another. So whether it is in forensics or other fields of law enforcement, I feel the law enforcement or laws were placed to make everyone safe, and with time, everyone to challenge them in order to make them as robust as possible while maintaining versatility and agility. I mean. Whether it is forensics or other fields of enforcement, laws have been placed, and what you notice is whenever someone refers to laws, usually these laws have been placed a long time ago, where certain things are not applicable now because time changed, everything changed except the laws. So even if I was in a different field of law enforcement, I would always challenge the laws that were placed there. So law enforcement is a passion, and I see that whether you are applying science to law, like forensics, always laws need to be challenged.
My question was, like, you said that law enforcement has always fascinated you. So according to you, what makes forensic ballistic a unique field from all the other disciplines of forensics?
Okay. Uh, we are guys, we have guns. So there is nothing specific, to be honest, that pushed me towards forensics ballistics. However, the thing is, if you see something that you think can be improved, go for it. Why not? I mean, firearms have been here since 1400s and have been improving very slowly because of what they had in terms of tools, what they had in terms of understanding and resources. From hand cannons to matchlocks, to wheel locks, to knife wounds, flint locks, percussion caps, etc., until modern firearms. During maybe 800 years, okay, only around eight developments, if I'm not mistaken, happened with regards to ignition sources of firearms, and change of from black powder to semi-smokeless powder or
Yes.
smokeless powder happened really recently. If you think about it, it's almost like 200 years ago. So we're in a time where everything is changing exponentially compared to traditional days or more than 150 years ago. And whether it is in forensic ballistics, whether it is in toxicology or other fields, there are certain things that changed and need to be challenged always. I mean, if you do not see that a field will change, and if you do not expect it to change, then you are kind of limiting your thinking. So one method of this is 8 years ago or 7 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, 3D printed firearms came into play. So this is something new. As forensic examiners or forensic firearms examiners, we need to be ready for this, whether it actually happened or not. So one example of this is we actually did experimentation where we printed 3D printed firearms, and we test fired them, and whether the firearm has or is still intact or has been exploded in hand. A firearm examiner can determine if this bullet or cartridge case has been fired from this 3D printed firearm. So this is one change that happened. How do you see the field itself changing with time, with the technology advancement, whether it is in materialistics or other things? So marks that we examine at the moment are in a projectile and or a bullet and a cartridge case. Do you think that this cartridge can change with time? And if it does, do you think that one day you will face a crime used by this object? And if it happens, are you ready now? So always be ready. Always challenge the boundaries. Always see what can and what can't be, what can not happen. And if it can happen, are you ready for it?
As you talked about 3D printed guns, so you really think that 3D printed guns can bring a revolutionary change in this field? Like they can be used in like next 50 years in time, and they can replace the use of machine guns made and manufactured?
So traditional manufacturing of firearms has been going on from casting to using equipment to finish or finish the parts in order for you to create big parts such as receivers or barrels or whatever, or small parts such as a trigger or internal mechanisms, maybe a sear or whatever. The thing is, 3D printing at the moment is possible to print firearms, and however, it is not, or it is not feasible to do so in mass production because it is expensive at the moment, and at the same time, only specific, I would say, companies or 3D printing technicians can apply this field to quality assured firearms, whether it is approved by NATO or CIP or whatever. Uh, Quality assurance is a must. At the moment, firearms can explode in someone's hand, which is dangerous. I wouldn't, if I had an army, I wouldn't give them something that can explode in their hand. So until that happens, and until it reaches a reasonable price, maybe it will happen within the next 50 years because it is lighter, it is easier. Instead of exporting it from one country to another, you can actually do it here or wherever you are. It is an interesting topic. However, in forensics, whether it is firearms or biometrics such as fingerprints.
If in life you have a chance to thank that one person, so whom you would like to thank? We are giving you a platform.
There is no one person. There is always my parents. So everything that happened, or I am who I am, because of them and what I've been throughout my life, whether it is in school, in my bachelor's degree, in the police academy, in my master's, and even today. Parents always influence decisions, and you always want to
Yes.
respect their point of view, and you always want to keep them happy, because at the end of the day, they are the ones who, if you worked really hard, they worked twice as hard just bringing you up. So if you go to the moon, we have a say, if you go to the moon and bring the moon to your parents, it is not enough in thanking them for everything, yes, or all the sacrifices that they've done. So it's for me, always parents come first.
Sir, according to you, what opportunities students can find in the field of forensic ballistics?
So different opportunities are endless. You just need to find a niche where you can explore more. Whether you are a technician or an examiner or analyst, or whether maybe you are a service provider and you advance or have technological advancements that can be offered to the field, because even they, as the industry of equipment, they have an understanding of the field, and they usually recruit people who understand because they can assist them on finding the need of the examiner. So this is one way of doing things. Another way is basically shaping the minds of the future and becoming a forensics teacher, whether it is in the forensics ballistics field or not. This is something else. Another thing is being an independent consultant. So if countries allow that, maybe in the US you can find forensic state labs, forensics city labs, etc. And at the same time, you can see independent consultants that can give you a third or second report for you to compare the results, maybe from the lab to yours. Maybe you can be an independent consultant. Maybe what else can you be? Maybe you can be a lawyer, or be the person that that actually challenges the procedures that happened or the examination method that happened in the cases. So all of these are endless. I mean, you need to find what is suitable for you and how can you improve and excel. Whether it is in law or whether it is in being an examiner or whatever the case may be, there is always a certain track for you to improve and for you to build credibility and build value in yourself. Always try to aim high. So there is a saying where you say, shoot for the moon and land on the stars. Same thing. Always try to be there.
Yes, sir. My last question to you is that, sir, what is a message that you want to give to young generation and to the people who are looking forward to a career in forensic ballistics?
Okay. So this message, whether whether it is for forensic ballistics or any other field, okay, I always say be like a clock. Okay, never stop. Always do your best. Always keep on moving. Always try. Always be persistent. Okay, because I have one of my favorite philosophers. His name is Jim Rohn. He says, if you try, there is a chance. But if you do not try, there is no chance. So always try to be the best. When I say try, I mean be certain. Do it. Put in the work. Don't say, well, it didn't happen because I don't know, I have bad luck. No, try. First try, go through it. There is no easy path to be the best. If you think you are spending 5 hours in your country, always know that there is someone in a different country spending more than 5 hours.
Yes, sir.
However, there is something interesting. So whether it is you or someone else or everyone in their own country, everyone has exactly 24 hours. So it is you who decides what you do with your time.
Okay, sir. It was so nice talking to you and all the experiences you shared, and definitely what you said about the prerequisite and how we need to perform on the field will definitely help us in future. Thank you so much for being with us, sir. It was really a wonderful experience to talk to you. I feel privileged.
It is always a pleasure. I mean, I'd like to thank you and the team from Clue4 Evidence and